Hello and welcome back to Talon 101. This time we're going to look at RFS F+4 or Right Parabellum Kicks and the mix-up it provides to Right Flamingo Stance. By that I mean every single move that puts Hwoarang in Right Flamingo Stance. That's down back 4, up 4, and 2-4. Very basic options to enter Right Flamingo Stance, and they're all covered by RFS F+4 as the opponent simply cannot, I repeat, cannot press a button on the first interaction, because pressing a button on the first interaction means tanking all this damage and, you know, the potential Oki that comes with it. The opponent doesn't want that at all. So RFS F+4 or Right Parabellum Kicks is extremely good for Hwoarang, but there's a couple of things you do need to know about this I8 high. It's great, yes, but you need to know what makes it great and what the opponent will potentially do against this I8 high. That is certainly one of them, what Jin is doing, backdashing. So again, I'm not going to go over the frames. I'm just going to tell you the mix-up. And that mix-up is if the opponent does anything on block that puts them in a standing position, it's a launch. If not a launch, it's plus frames. And that's plus 5. And that's a pretty good frame to have for Hwoarang. But yeah, again, it has to be something that puts them in a standing position, because if they don't do that, right? So while standing 4-4 is a standing position. But if they don't do that and they try to get creative with it, like they do a down jab here, I'm gonna get punished for throwing out RFS F+4. So again, most options or the common counterplay an opponent would do is to simply down jab, whether that be from blocking down back 4, or whether that be blocking anything that puts you to Right Flamingo from standing, because they don't want to deal with it. So now you have 3 options in Tekken 8, or Tekken 8 was kind enough to give 2 additional options to Hwoarang here. So if you enter anything into Right Flamingo, we're just going to use 1-2-4 as our basic example here. Flying Eagle will take that down jab challenge away. If you don't want to do Flying Eagle, you want to do something a little bit slower with higher reward, then you can do RFS F+3 and get your guaranteed FF3 or back 3. But if you want to like really let them know that, hey, I know that you're down jabbing in this instance, then yes, go for your combo in Air Blade and do let them know that you know, and then get your Oki on top of it. So that's basically the basic mind game. Anytime you enter Right Flamingo, it's a will they, won't they down jab every single time. Will they, won't they? And then it becomes like, do you throw out the airborne move or not? And the moment they do stop down jabbing because you've punished them enough with airborne moves, you'll end up with situations with -3, -7 with pushback. This is still okay for Hwoarang. And of course, if you went big, -13 is the worst it could potentially get. I say the worst it could potentially get. The actual worst is getting jab floated. So, and that's the next layer of this basic mind game. Because at higher levels, you will find opponents willing to challenge Right Flamingo with a jab. So if I do 2-4 into Flying Eagle, I get floated. Now, of course, that was RFS 3. But same thing. RFS F+3 gets floated. RFS F+4 gets floated. If I do it off down back 4 and I try to Flying Eagle, I get floated. I get jab floated. So that's a full combo-ish for the opponent. And that's not good for you. But of course, if they respond with that, then it's just a matter of just like letting it rip, right? Now, the next thing the opponent is allowed to do is to simply sidestep. Now, sidestep right is one of the best options for them against Right Flamingo. But RFS F+4 will keep them in place. Well, RFS F+4 and RFS F+3. So now, if the opponent knows how to deal with RFS F+4, they're going to employ jab, down jab, and sidestep. So now you have 3 things to worry about. So again, against sidestep, all you can do is RFS F+3 or RFS F+4. So if you commit to RFS F+4 and they jab, right, you lost the frames. Now again, if they do, let's say, a down jab, right, and you are really trying to catch sidestep right, you'll still lose. So you only use RFS F+3 here when you know they're actually sidestepping. So that means your first response or first button to press in the mix-up is to always press RFS F+4, because it'll cover 3 things at once. Number 1, you're covering sidestep right. So if the opponent sidestep right, in this instance, RFS F+4 is just like, no, stop that, right? And then if they jab challenge, right, you also take away that jab challenge. The only thing you don't take away is the down jab, because down jab, again, is a high crushing move that will prevent RFS F+4. But at least now you can at least narrow it down to that. That's how RFS F+4 works a lot in most mix-ups. Now, let's add more to the mix. If an opponent decides to use a specific evasive move, and all the opponent has to do is really just lab RFS F4, but some characters have an OS. Well, OS or like a pseudo OS, and in Jin's case, if I try to throw out RFS F4, right? So let's say they block the first RFS F4, right? Because they're expecting you to throw out RFS F4. So they want to block RFS F4 first, and then you do another RFS F4. Yeah, that happened. That happened. That really did, because that won't work on the first interaction, right? That's gonna doom your opponent. So now you're looking from the first interaction into like Right Flamingo, you're moving on to the second one. The second one is throwing out RFS F4. So if they hold on the 1-2-4, right? Or the 2-4 to make it 2 hits, now that means they're looking at RFS F4 by itself. Now again, you can still high crush a down jab after RFS F4. Just to show you that over here, we're gonna turn this back to 1 hit. And we're gonna call back the down jab. So we're now gonna look at RFS F4 exclusively and not the frames that come before it. So that's again 0 on block. You'll still avoid it. See, I avoided it with RFS 3. You will not avoid it with RFS up forward 4. You don't have enough jump frames there. But you'll avoid it with RFS up forward 3. Now just to bring Flying Eagle, you take it away as well. So you only have now 2 jump options here if the opponent is looking to do that. When, of course, RFS F4 gets blocked. But that specific one, that specific option in Jin up forward 2 is a big deal. Because what's Hwoarang's answer? You can't throw out another RFS F4. You can't throw out RFS forward 3, it's too slow. You can't throw out RFS 2. You'll get punished. You'll at least take away the counter hit, but you know, you still get hit. Now it's just like, okay, I'm 0. His mid comes up maybe at 15 frames, so throw out a 14 frame mid. He avoids me, sidestepping towards the left. So my only bet now at that point is to do RFS back 4. Because it's a power crush, but look at the axis. Look at that. Why Hwoarang just straight up doesn't even hit him. We're slowing it down here. And wow. Look at that. Jin just avoids him completely. So depending on the evasive option of your opponent, it either has to be something that has an inbuilt SS like Jin up forward 2, or it high crushes, maybe something like Asuka down back 2 or Asuka down back 1. That's when RFS F4 can present a problem. Now, of course, you may have an option to beat those. You may. The word is may. So in this case, for Jin up forward 2, after you do RFS F4, you don't do another RFS F4. What you need to do is commit to the full right Parabellum Kicks. Because now, as soon as he blocks the first hit, he's gonna press up forward 2, right? The launch will come out. And, you know, they can't move anymore. So that's like, okay, so that means on every interaction wherein they're waiting, so like if you do 1-2-4 again to RFS F4, you need to commit to this. And then now that adds to like the layers, like the mind game, when you add this specific evasive option. Actually, we can make it worse. Not I can make it worse. We can make it worse. You can throw out, or the opponent is allowed to throw out a power crush. So if an opponent does decide to throw out a power crush after RFS F4 specifically, again, because if you throw it out on the first hit, right, they're gonna lose. So again, the opponents are not looking on the first interaction, they're looking at the second interaction of RFS F4. So RFS F4 specifically, that's it. It's just like, okay, wait, he tackles the hits first, right, or absorbs the hits. So maybe I can do something like RFS 2 afterwards. No, I get punished. So what if I do RFS F4 into RFS 2? Now that's what you gotta commit to. So like as soon as you do RFS F4, you gotta do RFS 2. Or you do employ other options that would beat that. So that's RFS F+3, your grab, or you go low in RFS down 3-3. Whether you commit to the whole thing or not, again, because power crushes are vulnerable to lows. But again, it shuts down basically most of Hwoarang's RFS options. You're stuck to like 3. The other thing that the opponent's allowed to do is to simply rage art. And this is checkmate. If you don't commit to that, oh well, you win, right? But if you don't commit to that, right, you lose. And you die, you have to watch a cutscene, and if their HP is extremely low, it scales like crazy, and then you're dead. because you pressed RFS F4. So again, you need to be careful when the opponent has rage in this instance, because if they have rage and you press RFS F4, well, you're gonna press RFS F4, right? So let's say you did it because you wanted to prevent an opponent from throwing out a rage art. So you did 1, 2, 4 into RFS F4, right? So that prevents the rage art. But the issue is after they block the rage, after they block RFS F4 or get hit by RFS F4, you're now stuck in this little game of, do I enter right foot forward safely by doing RFS 2 and hope that they don't do rage art? Or do I keep committing to this little game of RFS F4? Because like, if they get hit, right? They get hit. It's just like, do I throw out another RFS F4 to stop them from doing a rage art? Or do I do RFS 2 to like be safe? Because if like they get hit, right? So they get hit by RFS F4 and then you do RFS 2. GG's. So now you're stuck in that little dilemma. But like it's just cut to those two options when RFS F4 hits, when rage is active. Because when rage is not active, and we just think about the Powercrush and they get hit by it, right? So they get hit by RFS F4 and you do RFS 2, you're safe. So rage complicates it a little bit on top of everything else, wherein the opponent's allowed to sidestep, they're allowed to jab, and they're allowed to down jab. And if they have an evasive move that's pretty good against RFS F4, like Jin's up forward 2, it gets like really tough. So again, the first interactions are all covered of any move for Hwoarang because of RFS F4. They need to use a high crushing move in order to beat RFS F4 in this instance. And the moment they introduce a high crush, you use a mid that low crushes that, safe mid or unsafe mid, and then they can now jab challenge because they're looking to float your airborne move. And at that point, you'd have to reintroduce RFS F4 or simply not enter Right Flamingo. That is also an option. Or bait them with like 1, 2, forward 3 and they get hit by the third hit. So you have to do also a lot more for this one move that does so much for Hwoarang. At the end of the day, this is all gonna depend on how much the opponent knows about RFS F4 on block. If they have up to this high level, which is, I guess, the standard for a competitive player, wherein they sidestep, jab, and down jab, and even introduce evasive moves and a Powercrush, then yeah, it's still something you can control. You just gotta watch for their tendencies and know, of course, which options they're doing and apply the correct one in that instance. And the more you know what to work around here, the more you can utilize Right Parabellum Kicks to your advantage, most especially if heat is active. So again, that's been the lesson for this video. That's everything I know about it. Again, I've been Frontier, and thank you for watching.